All right, I see we're at 5:30, so with that, I'll call the special workshop meeting for January 28th, 2025 to order at 5:30, and I'll ask Stephanie if you would call the roll, please.
Brent Gary,
Here,
Richard Bloom,
Here.
Frank,
you're muted, Fred, but I see you're here.
Yeah, I'm here attending remotely.
Thank you.
Beto,
Here.
John Smart, Ken Stoker.
Here.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. And if you all recall, a while back, we had a couple of questions in regards to different things that may be on the parking lot list, as well as firework regulations. So what I had asked Eric to do is put together a little bit of status of what the community development parking lot items have been. And then also we'll touch base a little bit on the past tense of what the fireworks regulations are, how they developed to where they were at. And what we can do is, I see we got on our agenda, we've got firework regulations and then community development parking lot items. I'm gonna flip it around and we'll start with number 4 with the community development parking lot items. Then I'll come back to Mayor Pro Tem Brink and let him speak to the firework regulations that we're gonna discuss. As that was his effort to do that. Stephanie, can I do that legally, or are you gonna beat me up on that one?
No, I just know that Eric's presentation is following the agenda. That starts with fireworks and then moves on.
Oh, it
the other.
does. Okay.
Yes.
We went over it a couple of different times, but didn't pay much attention to whether the boom boomers are in the front or in the back of the package. So with that being at the front of his presentation, we will go ahead and go as per the agenda. I was in hopes that we could have more conversation, but if the other council members couldn't make a meeting on time, we'll just go ahead and work with what we've got. So with that, I'll go ahead and throw it to Eric.
All right. Mayor, members of the council, would recognize the public, but I don't see them here. So in 2000 and hold on, let me make sure. So yeah, tonight I have a presentation on the fireworks and the community and economic development work plan and parking lot items. The fireworks have been a divided topic for citizens of West Richland for many years. In 2012, council held public forums and had many discussions on fireworks, which resulted in reduction of the number of days fireworks could be discharged in the city. Since then, each year, the mayor, council, and staff receive a handful of emails on the concern for noise and fire impacts from the fireworks. So in 2023, you may recollect the first annual survey that we sent out included a question about fireworks, which stated, which of the following best captures your feelings about firework regulations in the city? As you can see, the results were divided. Just a little more than half of those who took the survey don't want any changes to the regulations, while just under half would like to see changes to the regulations. Here's a slide deck that shows what is legal per the RCW. While some communities like West Richland accept the RCW as the standard, other communities have adopted and may adopt more stringent regulations. And here's a slide that shows other regulations found in the RCW. So challenges, I'd like to discuss these with you that we face as a city regarding challenges for firework regulations. Enforcement is a big issue. So it's had many conversations with Chief Grego, and he'll have some things to say here in a moment too, that it's next to impossible to enforce. An officer must be present in order to issue a citation for any illegal use of fireworks. Funding for extra patrols does not exist, and the number of officers needed for the expectation of the community, we don't have that many officers on staff. Chief Grego, I'll turn some time to you to address this as well.
Before the chief gets going, I'll make note that Council Member Hayes and Moran have arrived at 5:33. Thank you for joining us. Okay, Chief, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Enforcing illegal fireworks can be quite challenging for any police agency, especially when resources are limited and the department must prioritize other higher urgency calls. Here's a breakdown of the difficulties of WRPD. Limited personnel and resources. Being a smaller agency, we often have fewer officers on duty, making it difficult to allocate enough personnel to patrol for illegal fireworks. Our officers are allowed to take priority leave during this holiday, which often leaves us with minimal staffing to work overtime. This means the officers who are on duty on the 4th of July may be spread thin based on call load, having to prioritize more pressing calls like accidents, emergencies, or violent crimes rather than actively monitoring, investigating firework violations. Call volume and prioritization. Firework complaints tend to be non-urgent compared to other emergency calls. These can lead to firework complaints being deprioritized or decrease the likelihood of identifying the offender. Identification and enforcement. Unlike more straightforward offenses, identifying individuals using illegal fireworks is often difficult. They may only light up briefly and don't always leave it easy to identify evidence, especially if no one directly witnesses the offense. Plus, catching someone in the act can require officers to be in the right place at the right time, which can sometimes or most times be impossible. Fires. When a fire breaks out, law enforcement plays a critical role in supporting the fire department. And this is especially true for a smaller agency that may already be stretched thin with limited resources. Here's how it typically unfolds. Shutting down roads and managing traffic. One of the primary responsibilities of law enforcement during a fire is to secure the area around the scene. Officers are often tasked with blocking off roads and rerouting traffic to ensure emergency vehicles can access the site quickly and safely. This requires coordination with our local fire department and takes several officers, especially in the area of heavy traffic. Public safety and evacuations. If a fire threatens nearby homes or businesses, law enforcement officers may need to assist with evacuations, ensuring that people are safely removed from harm's way. Assisting firefighters on the ground. In addition to handling traffic and evacuations, police officers may be called upon to assist firefighters on the scene by providing security. This could include protecting their fire trucks, equipment, and firefighters from any potential threat or ensuring that bystanders don't obstruct the responsible efforts. Officers may also have to manage crowd control if the scene draws a large number of onlookers, which can further delay emergency vehicle efforts. Given that law enforcement agencies are usually dealing with the range of critical responsibilities during a fire, including protecting the public, managing resources and supporting the fire department responding to illegal firework complaints may become even more challenging. A lot of times the department is already spread thin during the 4th of July. And enforcing firework laws might fall further down the priority list when other priority calls are being dispatched. Changing the firework law to be more restrictive may not have the intended effect of stopping fireworks from going off. While stricter laws may limit the legal sales and usage, people who are determined to use fireworks may simply turn to illegal sources like buying from the reservation. In many cases, individuals might not be fully aware of the regulations and simply choose to ignore them, especially during the 4th of July when fireworks are a longstanding tradition. Enforcement of the new laws can also be challenging, as it would require significant resources and manpower to monitor widespread areas, and already stated in many communities, fireworks tend to be a low priority issue. Ultimately, tighter laws may lead to more illegal activity rather than curbing the problem altogether.
So I've also talked with Chief Carlisle and our fire marshal here, and both of them, while they would love to not have fireworks in the community, understand that this is a community that has them and that it is safer to have fireworks when you allow them because people will call when there's a fire. They're not concerned about being cited by the police. And so they'll call if there's a fire going on. And so there's a more rapid response by the fire department. Whereas if they're the potential of being cited or arrested by the police, they'll delay that call when it may be something that could have saved a structure or saved lives. So that is a concern that they've shared with me. So next slide. Common theme this year is that we do not have any funding. Cities don't have a printing press like the federal government when they need more funding. The wallet in this photo shows a few coins. Well, we just don't even have that this year. Things are very tight. If you have an expectation to spend staff time on this, you'll need to tell us what is going to fall off the priority list. Planning staff cannot help as we have state mandates to meet this year and next. I do not believe that the police staff have the capacity either. This will not be a simple text amendment. It'll require at least several open houses or town hall meetings. It will really include a divisive public comment time for these hearings. You'll see half the people show up in favor and for a change, and half that'll show up in opposition to the change. There is no fear on this topic of being seen or having their voices heard. They will come out and it will be divided right down the middle. There's not going to be a winner when this is done. No matter what the vote, council will have upset half the community. This will take a lot of staff time, political capital, and did I mention there's no funding for staff to work on this?
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate the presentation. So the what's next comes to the council for any discussion that it may have, pros, cons, anything that you'd like to discuss, talk about, or just go ahead and continue to move on. So I'll go ahead and council member. Yes, I was looking for you. That's why we have the card, so I remember who you are. Old age, right?
It's hell getting old. You know, there's one aspect, having been here for 25 years before we allowed aerials, but that meant we had aerials. And living in the desert area, and my neighbor always would set them off. Compliance has gotten a lot better. I mean, the key of the illegal fireworks being something on a stick. I don't see as many that are, bottle rockets and that kind of stuff, because the stick comes down burning and that's hell for the brush. And I remember the first city, you were there, the guy came in with this bag of fireworks, and a lot of it was sticks. Big sticks. And I've noticed watching the fireworks, very few of them appear to be rockets. They're mostly the mortars. And looking at our current regulation, we allow up to a 2.5-inch mortar, which is somewhat sizable. I would turn to Mr. Stoker. Do you?
No, there's bigger ones than that. I'm sorry to tell you.
Well, no, that are sold
Correct. There are bigger ones than that are sold. Yes.
here.
Yes.
Okay, but that's not
Can be
allowed
up
by
to-
our regs.
What regs? The state regs? That's
No, by
basically what our
by the city
limitation
regs.
is.
The city regs limits the diameter.
Oh, diameter. I'm thinking of length. Because there are those that are 4 and 5 inches in length as a mortar.
Yeah, with 40 grams and 2.5-inch diameter is what the reg.
Correct.
But what I've noticed over the years, having even set off my own, the multi-packs somewhat, I'm not quite sure they have little cardboard rings which come flying down. When you set off those cubes, whereas the older version, where you dropped them in, lit them and dropped them in, they didn't have that entity coming out.
Potential.
And
I don't think that's in every case.
but needless to say, I see that making it legal is better than making it illegal from the standpoint of the source, because we can control what's in there. We might look at cutting back on some of I looked at the 2.5-inch 40-gram mortar, and that those are probably the loudest that we can shoot off. But I go back to other communities where fireworks are legal. And the city of Pahrump in Nevada has a policy where the individual has to, when they purchase fireworks, they get a permit to purchase when they purchase it, at which time they sign a acceptance of the risk associated with the fireworks. And I'm not quite sure that would be something we couldn't require our vendors in the city to issue those permits, that when somebody purchases it, we can design it as to where they intend to set it off, who's responsible for it. And that way, somewhat placing a little bit more risk to the purchaser. And then for enforcement standpoint, you could ask, let me see your permit type of thing. If you don't have a permit, you have a violation. That would be one of the simpler approaches I see as enhancing this a little bit. But that's only a suggestion.
Mayor Pro Tem Brink, you have your hand up, and apology for not going to you first, but I thought we'd just go ahead and take it as the hands came up. So go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My thoughts on fireworks are as follows. I recognize that the city has had a long history of firework demonstrations in celebration of 4th of July and also New Year's Eve. As a matter of fact, this time New Year's Eve, there wasn't any snow, it wasn't too cold, and I heard quite a few fireworks go off. My position is that we do need to make some adjustments. And I have not even given thought yet to saying we can't have aerials, we can't have mortars, whatever. Because when we look at our city with the survey, it's divided. 50% say no change, another 50% say change or eliminate. So it's a very divided electorate that we have that express their opinions. But what I see as an area that I would ask my fellow council members to think about is the fact that we have 3 nights of fireworks. We used to have a week. I can't even begin to comprehend what a week of fireworks going off would be. But I think 3 nights of fireworks is unnecessary. And I have had a total of 7 citizens that I've spoken to that have emailed me with regard to fireworks. And all 7 of them see that as a reasonable compromise to just reduce the nights that fireworks are permitted. So my suggestion is we eliminate fireworks on July 2nd and July 3rd. And the 4th of July, that's when 90% of them go off, but we will no longer face, or the challenge that law enforcement and the fire district faces with additional days of fireworks will be minimized. And of course, there'll be people that will still set them off. I realize that. But the majority of our citizens are going to follow the law and not set them off until July 4th. So my suggestion for any incremental and initial change would be to reduce the firework demonstration to 1 night a week, or 1 night, the 4th of July. That's my recommendation, and I'd be interested what my fellow council members think.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brink. We'll move to Councilmember Moran, and then also Chief or any other staff member want to jump in and have conversation through this. Go ahead and feel free to do so. Councilmember Moran.
Thank you very much. I would like to absolutely agree with Councilmember Bloom and Mayor Pro Tem Brink. I think that the size and the loading, I think that would be fantastic if we could limit that a bit. I know that every single day for a week leading up to and a week after the 4th of July, I have to make certain that I'm in my yard before my dogs are so that they don't accidentally eat something that will kill them, because the leftover firework bits have chemicals on it that can kill dogs or any other animal that eats it. Besides the fact that they are terrified by the noise. And even though I grew up loving fireworks, I have gotten to the point where I absolutely despise them. And I'm listening to the scanner radio all the time to make certain that there's not a fire near my house so that I know whether or not I need to break out the hose again to water down my yard more. Also think that limiting the dates is absolutely reasonable. I don't know of any other holidays other than my personal favorite of Halloween where we celebrate more than one day. And even if we did shoot off fireworks for Halloween, I think it would still be just the day of the actual holiday. With all of that being said, and I absolutely agree with both of those. I also hear what staff is saying, and I'm wondering what we can do to, what other options do we have? We either can change things and then move something off of the list that we're going to do because we don't have the ability to pay for staff time for more than what we already have. Or we not do anything and we once again kick the bucket down the road as we have for at least since I've been on council and well before then also, though we have made minor adjustments, at least prior to me being on council. I would say that I have also in the past years back talked to the fire department and they not only make it to where all of their members, if I remember correctly, cannot call off, but also they call in reserves to make certain that they have extra people because of how many times they get called out. Because just like our police force, they get called out to anywhere because of the way that we work as a community where if there's something that happens in Kennewick and we're nearby, we're going to have to, if we can, respond to help out because that's what we do as a community is we help each other out. And I also feel like if we limit the days and the ability for some of the larger, more combustible materials to be used, then that might lead to less fires, which might lead to less need for crowd control, less need for traffic control. So there's a lot of things I think to discuss. There's the actual limits that we would like to do. There's also what we can do to help out the fire department, which is doing this to help us along with themselves. I know that they had discussed the possibility of looking at maybe an extra tax specifically on fireworks, which I think we had looked at for other things and discovered we can't do, if I remember correctly. But maybe something like a permit would be useful. I think that putting the onus and the responsibility on the person that is purchasing the fireworks, I think that is absolutely reasonable. So I think there is a lot to discuss. I think that we do need to make changes, but I also think that we are going to need to make decisions on what we're not going to be able to do as a city if we do want to make changes to this.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just for clarification, every year since I've been at as the mayor, every after the 4th of July, I ask council if they feel necessary to revisit. And this is the first time that I've actually had a council's recommendation to revisit. It's always been a consensus that no, we've done all that we can do. We've done everything to mitigate the situation and ended up with a 50-50. So just for clarification, the can has not been kicked down the road. It's just been the council's decisions in the past councils to, we don't have any need for the discussion.
Well, I will say that I know that every time that it's come up, I have said that, yes, I think that there should be changes. So there have been, maybe not a consensus, but there have been council members saying, at least one or two, stating that they would like to see changes. And it feels as if it has been kicked down the road. I should perhaps have worded it that way.
My decisions not bringing things back are based on the consensus of majority. So that's the reason that you saw it as it was. And this last time we had more than, I think it was a 50-50 or more that was interested in having a conversation. So with that, we'll move to Councilmember Stoker.
Yes, so I'd like to ask a couple questions. And maybe this has been investigated or stats have been compiled. I don't know, but Chief, can you do you have an idea of what the nature of the complaints that are submitted regarding fireworks at that time frame are?
Yeah, I'd say the two big things are, even if it's a day that they can shoot them off, an aerial goes off and they say that's an illegal firework. The people that don't understand that aerials are legal, I think that's one of them. And then two is the time and dates that are, it's illegal to shoot them off. Those are the biggest complaints. But on 4th of July, there's a bunch of illegal fireworks going off in the city. And if you've ever seen the city in the 4th of July, it's like, okay, how would you like me to find that?
Well, there's that too. And
Yeah.
and again, I mean, I'm just curious how people can identify and know which ones are illegal and which ones aren't. I mean, it has to be pretty significant in order to tell the difference between what's
Yes, sir.
off the reservation and what isn't.
And I think what's frustrating from my point of view throughout my career has been, there's an expectation for me to find them, catch them and give them tickets. And I'm going back to this. I'm not making excuses for law enforcement. You drive around the corner, you think, okay, this is the block that a firework went off. They're not supposed to be going off. And they see the patrol car or whatever. And the first thing you see is people duck into a house, nothing went off. And it's like, are you trying? You're trying. But then the priority kicks out, the priority call, domestic violence. The next thing you know, I'm busy for 2 hours arresting somebody, taking them to jail, while there's 5 other complaints that just came down while I was gone. So it's the truth, and it's frustrating because the expectation is a high level and like, it's not always possible.
Well, if I may, I didn't think I would ever share this story before, but when my wife and I were selling fireworks, I do know there was one occasion where someone had shared with me from another city that at the time was not legal, that they buy these things, they go somewhere public that's not around their home, they shoot it off, pack up, move to the next spot, do it again, because they're trying to avoid an encounter that you're talking about. And I think that's partly why Pasco and Kennewick have allowed fireworks back, not to the degree or, the options that we do here, but that's the nature of it. I mean, if people want to, they're going to do it. And it's going to be hard for you or any other officer to do anything about that, especially in this particular situation. I was like, no, I don't want to hear this because I don't want to know anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's part of the frustration I'm talking about. Exactly that. We'd love to be at the right place at the right time all the time. It would be great. My job would be a lot easier, but again, it's harder than you think.
I don't underestimate that difficulty. I would totally understand. I mean, I've set off a number of fireworks in my life. I'm quite familiar with what is available or at least is legal in our community, because that's exclusively what I have shut off is based on the inventory that I've been given when I was selling them. I know how loud they are. And once in a while, I can tell that one's probably more than what was allowed here. But again, that's very hard to tell, in my opinion. Secondly, I was just wondering, in the past, you can put any kind of period of time on it, but how many fires have we really had in our community where we've needed emergency responses activated?
I don't have the exact number. Over the years, though, just from my memory, matter of fact, even reporting to the council, I mean, with the fire department stuff, and being on patrol, I've seen it on 4th of July. A fire gets started on this field over here. The fire department's been fantastic about their response. It's down and out fast, which, thank God for, because it could have, spread and go do things. So I'm not minimizing that the fires haven't happened. They have. But the fire department's not, we're preparing for these moments. And that I believe is the fire department's job and the law enforcement's job, that if we see something, we're communicating with them right away too. So there's no delay in them getting there. And so we're very proactive about it. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, Ken, but
I'm not trying to
that's what I
diminish
have.
it, but I was just looking for maybe if we could do a comparison amongst our sister communities as well. I mean, when I was selling fireworks, I was trying to pay attention because I was always the mind, oh, please don't, I don't want a restriction, honestly. I'm going to be right out in front with it. I think The idea of compromise is great when everybody thinks that everybody wins in a compromise, but that's not the case. Somebody wins and somebody loses. You just may not be losing as much as what the winners originally wanted, but somebody always loses.
And I would comment too that if the mayor feels that the hazards are too high, let's say the wind's going, Mayor, we've talked about it almost every year almost. I think the wind's going to be blowing some type of, speed, but he does have the ability. Now, will that shut it down
True,
that
we
night?
passed
Probably
that,
not,
yes.
but our officers that night, if that ever occurred, would be very proactive about that went off. We have to do this because it's obviously public safety. And that's another thing I want to tell you. I'll tell you all of you is public safety is a priority. What does that mean? You heard me talk about prioritizing calls. You could just use your own imagination what could come out on 911 that night, And so they're going to prioritize. And somebody that says there's an illegal fireworks going off, okay, but then we just have this kick out over here, an accident, somebody's injured. I'm going to the accident, So I just want to make sure everybody understands that stuff.
Understood, and I'm totally on board with that. But at the same time, I think our citizens have actually been very good about keeping themselves within proper limits. I remember one time there were fires in Richland that were started by ground level fireworks. To me, the ground level ones are more dangerous than the high aerial ones. That's just my observation. I have no scientific proof behind that. The two fires that I have been around have been started by fountains or on the ground. So my son I didn't actually see this. He reported it to me, but I did see the after effects after it was put out. A couple days later, they were setting them off in the street. The street's not flat perfectly. I mean, I screw mine down in a piece of 2x or plywood. They're not going anywhere. But it wasn't anchored. It tipped over while it was still going, shot off into the sagebrush. Luckily, they had hoses on the ready to get it out, but yeah. So anyway, those are some of my comments at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Stoker. Councilmember Smart?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So back to the chief. Chief, I've got another question for you. So we've had neighboring cities that have put restrictions on fireworks and aerials. And I was wondering if you have any inclination or memory of what you heard maybe about complaints from citizens to those cities, even when the restrictions were in place.
I haven't heard the comments from the citizens that I can remember. I would tell you the only thing that I'll tell you from being on the radio as an officer, and those cities, when they get complaints, let's say it's illegal for them to have aerials, and you look over at their city and there's aerials going off everywhere. I've heard supervisors clearing, 40 complaints that are pending, said dispatch, assign those all to me and clear them. He or she can't even address it. I mean, so I've never heard the direct complaints from any citizen from other cities. I can just tell you from my experience of hearing what I've heard.
Yeah, so I will say that I've been able to look at the view of Pasco and Richland for the last 25 years when they haven't had restrictions, when they have had restrictions. And I see very little difference, actually, honestly. It goes back to the concept that this is an activity that my personal belief shouldn't be further restricted and is also practically impossible to enforce. And like the chief has stated, I mean, how do you possibly tell where an aerial went off from, whose backyard, behind what fence? And I am not a person or a council member who has any inclination to continue to pass ordinances or modify rules and restrictions that have no possible way of enforcing. Sorry, not to say the police aren't completely capable. It's just that it's not a technically feasible activity. And I think that our citizens, like Councilmember Stoker said, have been very responsible. I do stay up on the 4th of July, and I mean, with just a few minor exceptions, things stop on time. Activity ceases. There are, of course, a few spurious, ignitions, but holy smokes, I mean, nothing we do is ever going to change that. I just don't see that. That's not going to happen. You're going to have people that try lighting one off on Wednesday night or something, or whatever the day is.
Well, I also want to make something very clear. Somebody gets hurt, somebody starts a fire negligently, whatever. Oh, we're all over this. So don't think that for 1 minute we're turning a blind eye to anything. No way. And Mayor and I have had these discussions. Public safety is number one. And so I'm just letting you know, we do enforce when we have those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that comment. That's actually one of my bullet points here in my notes is that people are already liable. Even if that liability is hard to enforce, they are liable for what they do. If they start a fire, they catch their own house or the neighbor's house or somebody else's house on fire, that liability exists. Those laws are there. So people should understand that. I would say that I like the conversation, Mr. Mayor, about that we're not kicking the bucket down the road. I don't really think there's a bucket to kick because it's always been 50-50. Or if Councilmember Buell were here, he'd say it was 30-30-30, you know. I mean, and we had that conversation for so many years. So I don't see that this is as any kind of mandate. I do know that there are people that are very bothered by it. I've had dogs that go wild with fireworks too. I am in no position, however, to further regulate a longstanding nationwide American tradition of celebrating our 4th of July Independence Day with fireworks. It is something that has existed for the history of this country, and I am not in favor of trying to somehow limit it or whatnot. However, I am in favor of making sure the public is educated. So the idea of a permit, Councilmember Bloom mentioned, is interesting, but it's not going to be binding, and I certainly don't want to charge people for it. I've always said that our local high school shouldn't let a person graduate until after they've had a 2-hour course on the physics of fireworks, you know, like what comes up must come down. And when the wind is blowing, it's not going to come down in the same place you launched it from. So, you know, a flyer that kind of has a couple of pictures, I could imagine, you know, firework coming up and straight back down with no wind, and a firework coming up and traveling 400 feet when there's a 12-mile-an-hour wind would be really interesting to hand out at these fireworks stands. Because honestly, I've personally witnessed people setting our desert, I say our desert because it's just down the road from me, on fire because they didn't seem to understand this. So education would be good. But I'm not really, permit, go ahead.
Well, I mean, permit system was primarily education, and the charge was minimal, like $5 charge. And that's mainly, it became the onus of the retailer to turn that into the city, but the person that sets them off takes a permit, a copy with them, type of thing. And all I'm looking at is it tends to reinforce that you have the owner's permission to set it off. You know, you identify where you're going to set them off, type of thing. It might reduce some of this cross-city movement of our materials. And you know, it's go buy me some fireworks type of thing. Somebody's gonna have to sign for it type of thing. That's the only reason behind it. And I don't think it would be a huge administrative burden to place on the fireworks stands, but that would be Mr. Stoker's.
That was going to be exactly my question to Councilmember Stoker, since he's been in the fireworks business for a few years, putting these kids through college. What kind of burden would that be on the vendor? Could you kind of elaborate on that? I know I see a lot of people standing around at some times. They're standing around at sometimes wanting to expedite their purchases. So after Eric's done, I'll throw it back to you.
So I might help Mr. Stoker out and curb this because it's against the law to charge for a permit at fireworks stands. So state law prohibits that from happening. So we couldn't charge for the permit. And my concern is that from a staff's perspective is the enforcement, both from the police department and then from the city side. Who's going to pay for the printing of the permits and distribution of the permits? How is that going to be funded? Where is that going to come from? And so to me, it just adds another layer of additional work for staff that I mean, we're bare bone staff right now with the workload that we have. And I'm concerned with burnout with staff this year because the amount of work that we have and the lack of budget to fund things. And so adding minutia like this, it seems like, just to track something down and, I mean, create liability that they already have liability for, seems like a belt and suspenders approach to something that's not necessary. So that's, from a staff's perspective, that's my feedback to you on it. And charging for a permit, not trying to get Ken out of his question here, is against the law.
And
Yes,
I
that
just
two
want,
birds with one stone right there. Sorry, Councilmember Bloom and Councilmember Stokey are off the hook, so we'll go to Councilmember Fettle first.
Can I finish just a couple comments on that, please? I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, we'll let
Oh.
him roll. Yeah, we'll let him roll first and then we'll come back through. He's been patiently waiting.
Well, that was gonna be my first comment with the permit, although I like the concept. It'd be impossible to manage and then having to put that on the vendors to make sure it's filled out and people use the right name. We have a bunch of them that say Mickey Mouse and Santa Claus, and that would just be a big mess. So after the 4th of July meeting, our first council meeting after the last 4th, I can't find the numbers. I had the numbers from Chief Carlisle being the city liaison. What I do remember was I have 23 in front of me. The numbers for calls for service from 23 to 24 went down as they did from 22 to 23. And other than the flat top fire, which was everybody saw, the actual number of fires have also decreased over the years. And I think that is probably partially to our residents learning what's allowed, what isn't, and then not also firing them off in illegal spaces. Like I'm assuming the flat top fire probably came from fireworks fired off in Flat Top Park, which aren't allowed. Right, then, but I'm assuming that's
It
where
was the
probably
top
came-
of the hill.
But it probably came from there, right? And
I think there were people on the top of the hill.
oh,
lighting them
actually,
up.
people up on the hill.
Yeah, I saw, we witnessed some of that.
Could have come from both directions.
But
with
it
the
could
wind
have.
blowing that
Yeah.
way.
and I think last year there was a permit for flat top for a group, wasn't it last year? And then they end up shooting off fireworks illegally or something? Or something.
Yeah, they reserved the bark for the day and we put a condition on there that they couldn't light off fireworks, and they ignored that condition. We made them sign that they read that condition and they blatantly ignored that. So our police department went down there and gave them some love.
Nice. And hopefully they're never able to get a permit again. Anyway, so on this whole thing, I don't think logistically, right, we can't enforce it. So I would be open to if we wanted to restrict the number of days, but I'm good with the way the policy reads now. And I don't know what kind of time, even if we just adjust it to single day, how much time is that put on the staff to create that ordinance? I know a lot of our citizens are law abiding, and if we did say, hey, only on the 4th, they probably would respect that, but there's still going to be fireworks on the 2nd, the 3rd, the 5th, the 6th, as they are now. Like Councilman Smart said, the occasional after midnight, you get the 5 or 6 and kind of goes away. So I leave it the way it is, but if we were to do any adjustment, I'd be in favor of moving it to the 4th. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to mention that with a permit, people buy fireworks at around the 4th of July week to use at other times during the year in other places. They take them to summer camp and launch them in the boat out in the middle of the lake. They do all sorts of things. I think that this would take, there's a lot more complexity to this situation than just, hey, let's, make them sign a permit that says they're going to do this, that, or the other thing. I don't want to make our citizens lie. And I don't really think that it's a binding thing anyway. So I was going to mention that back to education. I don't think anybody purposefully sets fires. Well, actually, I take that back. I have actually seen people purposefully set fires. Matter of fact, the desert burnt like a decade ago out in front west of our house from kids lighting off a bunch of bottle rockets. We heard them, got out in the front yard in time to hear the tires squealing as they buzzed down the road, right? So, I mean, there is that nefarious activity, which again, no permits or day restrictions are going to change that, sadly. And they're still just as hard to catch, But what I would say is that there are a lot of people in this community who who would like to see fireworks be, well, first of all, eliminated, but also, I shouldn't say a lot, but 30%, it seems, about a third or 15%, depending on what you want to count. There's an opportunity for education as far as fire prevention, which I think is really should be the city is concerned with safety. I would encourage a volunteer group to come up with the one-page flyer that shows the dynamics of launching aerials or the dangers of catching the ground on fire with a ground demonstration, and maybe thinking about pointing out just a couple bullet points like, hey, you should be like at least 40 feet away from your nearest desert before you launch this thing, or whatever the numbers are, right? Let our citizens who are concerned about this voluntarily, on their own accord, without any cost to the city, go to the stands, give them a stack of 500 pages if they're so concerned about this, and let them hand them out. I mean, it's a free country. We don't have to do everything here. It doesn't have to be the nanny state. If somebody wants to take responsibility for educating citizens to do a better job at launching fireworks, you're free to do it. And at what cost for an individual? I don't know about how much it costs the city, probably thousands and thousands, but for an individual, it might cost you $50 to make, 500 flyers to hand out at stands, and it's volunteer time to hand them out. So I'm not really in favor of pursuing this conversation any further, frankly. It's fine the way it is. It's always been this way. We've restricted it in the past. I don't like to see us chomp it down further and further. We go from 3 days to 2 days. Before you know it, it'll be 6-hour period only on the 4th of July. You got to buy a permit. It'll go from $5 to $20. I mean, no, this is not what this government is here to do, I don't think. And we don't see any actual adverse impact beyond annoyance, which we could all count a number of things that annoy us, not the least of which is paying our taxes. So I just want us to get real here and understand that there are loud voices, but they are a minority, and there really doesn't seem to be any lasting impact here. So that'll be my comments for the evening. Thank you.
For the evening?
Just for this topic. Thank you.
Okay. Stephanie, make note. We'll roll through one more time, and then we'll finish up with Mayor Pro Tem Brink. Mr. Councilmember Bloom.
I don't, I would not object to eliminating fireworks on the 2nd, but I do believe that looking at the calendar and going back in history, I was the one that said, why do we have to start fireworks at 8 o'clock in the morning? So I cut it back to 6 o'clock when we first did the regs, and we decided on 3 days. But it gives some flexibility to people when they are going to celebrate. 4th of July sometimes is the wrong day for them or whatever, but I wouldn't mind if we eliminated one of the days, the 2nd. The other way, since this probably wouldn't be illegal, we could require the vendors to post rules at West Richland rules that are in the WAC at their stand. I don't want flyers because we're just going to litter the streets with them. So that would be the only other thing. That would be the only other thing that we would, have them require them to post rules at those stands. That's all.
Mayor, you all right? If I could,
Go.
so the police department has given flyers to the fireworks stands in the past.
Member Stover.
Thank you. And being a former stand worker, I used to get bundles. I believe they were from the state. It seems like the last year or two, maybe we didn't get them and we were still living off of what we had got before, but it specifically showed on there what was not allowed. So firecrackers, bottle rockets, M80s, all that kind of stuff. And we were instructed to, at a minimum, give one to every, we didn't fill every bag, just one to every transaction. I was under the impression that was like state law for all I know. I mean, I was just told, do it, and I did it. So, we do have those things, and there are probably not as detailed or as extensive instructions as you may like, but there are instructions pretty much in every box. Shows you how to set it up, what to do properly. And when I was doing it, I tell people how I do it. Like I said, I get a piece of plywood, I have 4x4 stands underneath it, everything is screwed down. I even had one experience where I had a fountain topple over on my stand, on my platform. And so I started rigging a way to clamp it in there. So, because different sizes, I need to be able to move it around. So, I mean, people who, common sense. I mean, be smart about it. It's not that hard, really. As far as, I know this is probably a dead horse, but to me, requiring the vendors to do any more, one, in the grand scheme of things, they're likely to just forget about it because especially on the 4th, and as you get into the afternoon of the 4th, when everybody's at the last minute trying to get their stuff, and as you said, there's lines of people there, and you're trying to serve everybody, you're not going to be worried about this other thing that they've asked you to do. And secondly, I don't feel comfortable as a vendor, if I was still a vendor, to have some form of enforcement empowerment put upon me. That wouldn't fly well with me either. To me, it's almost, they're not getting compensated for the additional burden. And so to me, it's, do I dare say this, a form of quasi enslavement. You're making them do your work for you. So anyway, those, I guess, maybe to me, it just seems like everything keeps getting pared down more and more. I'm sorry that we can't all enjoy it the same. I wish we all could. And I truly, truly feel for those who have situations like our military veterans who have PTSD who may react to this. I have dogs too who don't like it. My pit bull will cower in the corner. And she's the nicest dog you can ever come across, but she does not like the bangs. And so we do what we can to help her get through it. As far as times, last year, was last year my first year not doing it? We went out of town on the 3rd and 4th. The 2nd was when I actually shot my fireworks off because that was the only day, the only time I was going to be able to do it. So you take that away and you take, to me, a sizable portion away from me. So we all have to learn to work and get along. I don't own a tree on my property, but I swear I rake up several dozen bags of leaves every year. So, and that's a lot of work. So when do I get to come complain about all the trees in our community that are littering in my yard that I have to take care of and clean up? I mean, I don't, because I just do it. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry if everyone feels I'm being flippant. I'm not trying to be, but there are other examples where things happen that we all have to take care of that other people cause. So, anyway, I guess I'll be quiet now too on this subject.
Thank you. Councilmember Moran.
Thank you. So first, I would like to talk a little bit about the education aspect of it. While I used to be somebody who would say constantly, well, all we need to do is we need to educate more on, we need to educate people more regarding certain things in order for things not to happen. And I don't know whether it's because of my role on council or because of my role outside of council, but I think that people, even if they are educated, are going to be maliciously non-compliant. Just like the people with Flat Top Park, just like the kids that you're going to say, hey, don't touch that oven. It's hot. You're going to burn yourself. Hey, don't pull the dog's tail. It's going to bite you. Education, even for adults. Honestly, I think that most people should know that if you light a firework and I think that people understand the concept of things that go up, go down, and burning things that go up could come down burning also, and you need to have water there. You shouldn't be drinking. They know all these things and they poo-poo it because they're like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. I'm not going to burn my fingers off using this M80. People think those things. So while I would love to say that more education would be beneficial, I unfortunately don't think that that would work. And I hate to poo-poo an idea, but yeah. I'm also wondering, just out of curiosity, the stands, I know that I've heard, but I don't know what the numbers are. Do we have a specific number of how many stands are run by nonprofits and do not actually get sales tax from their sales that they give to the city? Do we have that information? I know it's, right now just asking, so I don't expect anything.
No, but I can look that up and email that out to you.
Okay, I appreciate that because from what I understand, there's a significant amount that are nonprofit. Right. No, not saying that. Just saying there is a significant, from what I understand.
But they still pay sales tax. The
Nonprofits.
They still pay the sales tax. They just get the fireworks at discounted rate or something, and they get to take home the profits from what they sell, or maybe they get them at the retail rate, but they're making because Mr. Stoker wouldn't have run the business if he wasn't making money at it. So the nonprofits make the money off of that, but they still pay sales tax.
Okay, thank you. I did not know that. An instance where education is helpful. Thank you. So some other things that I'm wondering about, I'm not certain if the flyers really are beneficial, but I'm wondering, I know that there's been a lot of talk about community involvement, and I know that in talking with the fire chief, they talk about bringing in reserves, and we have volunteers for that. Is there any way to do something similar to a, dare I say, neighborhood watch, but specifically for fireworks that we could maybe implement in these areas where people are concerned about it? Maybe they would like to actually volunteer, or at the very least see what it would be like to try and catch people actually shooting off fireworks, not giving them the ability to do the same thing as a law enforcement officer, but at least doing something similar to the way that a community watch or a neighborhood watch would be able to do.
I'll throw this up and then let the chief hit it out of the park. But I think if you try to put together a community watch situation on a controlled chaos for a city, you're going to end up with more domestic violence and probably other things than what you want to deal with. But that's just my idea.
You've never been in a strict HOA.
I highly recommend not doing that.
That's fair. It's a valid point. I'm just trying to brainstorm some things here. So other things that I will say, though, I'm not certain that I feel comfortable considering putting more laws regarding fireworks into a situation that we would consider a nanny state, because the purpose isn't to keep people from hurting themselves as a nanny state would be. It would be from hurting others or others' property. And I definitely think that for many people, it is far more than an annoyance because it actually costs money. I spend hundreds of dollars on money to try and make certain that my dog doesn't rip all of her toenails out trying to get away from the noises, which is how bad her fear is of fireworks. And I know that there are others that will leave the area entirely because of fireworks, and that costs money. I think that it is far more than annoyance for many people. So I am concerned that some might consider it just an annoyance, the reason why people would not like to have fireworks or to limit fireworks. I would also like to say that unfortunately common sense is not common, because I have heard common sense mentioned a few times. yeah, there's still people that on New Year's, I don't think here, but in many places, they still fire firearms into the air and don't understand that what comes up must come down. So there's that concern. I would also agree, though, that I don't think that we should require more from vendors. Absolutely agree that, because I think that it isn't something that should be the burden of the vendors when it comes to enforcement. But I do feel like we must find some way, because we can't just say that it's, and I understand the reasoning behind it, but it makes me it gives me the ick to think that we shouldn't have laws because it's too hard to enforce them. And I know that that is a severe underestimation of what's being said. But I feel like there must be some way to make it so that people's concerns are met, so that they aren't dealing with litter that is toxic to their animals. I would say more than most tree leaves, or things that might damage their house because of burning embers. So there's got to be something that we can do. And I'm sure that one night isn't going to be enough to think about that. But if we all kind of went back and thought about it more, perhaps maybe we could discuss it again at a later date, sometime somewhat soon, just because I feel like there's a lot more brainstorming and other ways that we might be able to do something. But again, I guess it kind of all goes back to, in all of this still, if we decide that we want staff to do something with this, we are going to have to figure out what we're going to have them do less of or spend less time on in order to do something for this.
Councilmember Hayes?
Thank you, Mayor. The way I see it is, what several others do, is I think it's fine the way it is. I think that changing it by 1 or 2 days, cutting it back, I don't think it's going to make that much difference, because they're going to do it anyway. And I think it's it's give and take, just like discussion has been. There's things that people might not like, the raceway and the noise, and so there's things, and you have to realize in a community there's going to be give and take, and I think we should keep it the way it is for now. Thank you.
And we'll finish up with Mayor Pro Tem Brink this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I appreciate the conversation that everyone's had this evening. In my opinion, a lot of very valid points have been made with regard to vendors, flyers, education, reducing charges, permits, the whole gambit. However, I do want to comment specifically on a few items that were mentioned. I believe that if a change is made, it will be followed by our citizens. Our citizens are responsible individuals. And at least 1 or 2 council members pointed out that fact. And if we did reduce the number of days, our citizens will comply. We used to have 7 days. We no longer have 7 days of fireworks going off. And perhaps 2 days is something to consider, perhaps just the 4th of July. But if we take any action on those 2 simple moves, what we will do is this. We'll have less demand on fire, less demand on police resources, less trauma for the humans and the pets that suffer from PTSD, or I think Councilmember Stoker said, don't like the bangs. So that's an immediate positive step that we can take, which has minimal impact on the individual's ability to enjoy the 4th of July, but it has a very positive impact on the citizens' ability to have peace and enjoyment for those that find fireworks very traumatic. I served in the military, as did several on the council. My sons are on active duty in the military. We're all about celebrating our nation's independence. But let's reduce the number of days that it takes to celebrate it. It does not take 3 days to celebrate our independence. I'd be happy with 2. I'd be happy with 1, but 3 days seems very excessive to me. So I close with that. Thank you for the discussion.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brink, much appreciated. Now, council, I want you to
Can I
take
just
in
make one more comment, Mayor?
one more.
Just one quick
Okay,
one.
then you owe me one.
I get that. I'll owe you one. I just want to hypothetically say, let's say we have the same level of fireworks sales and we reduce it down to one less day or 2 less days. You're now going to have 3 days worth of fireworks in a much more concentrated level. Maybe that's good. Maybe it's not. Maybe that causes more fires. Maybe it doesn't. I'm just saying you're now making it more concentrated than what we currently have right now. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
And as we go on with this presentation, you're going to find a lot more items that are on the parking list that some are funded, some are funded, unfunded mandates by the state. Also some that we don't have funds for. Take into consideration if this is something that you choose to revisit at another time, like Councilmember Moran said, you might want to take and put it up on the priority of your parking lot list. We have no staff time to participate in such an endeavor. Because anytime you're going to make a change that is going to be as drastic as might be suggested, is going to involve public participation and comment, because I believe everybody believes that every citizen should have opportunity to weigh in. So there's not that ability with what we have right now with the lack of budget for personnel, staffing, and everything that's on the plate. So I'm going to let Eric go ahead and continue on his presentation just to show you just a little bit about what is on the plate, and also his valid concern is potential employee burnout. There's been some change in employees, whether it was burnout or not, but workload definitely has a factor on some people's decisions. So I'm not going to get into those weeds, but we're experiencing all that with the Me, Myself, and I departments right now. You just wouldn't believe the workload these people have got going on. And we have no money to backfill the needed positions, let alone go through multiple evenings of public comment, notification, staff time to rewrite whatever council's decision may be. So even if the consensus would be to make change, it's not something that's in our cards right now, but I wanted to have the opportunity to have those conversations, as I said we were going to do so. So with that, Eric's going to share a little bit more about just exactly what he has going on in the community development side of things. Eric?
All right, thank you, Mayor. The conversation was a good one for the fireworks. It reminds me of saying, I can't make everyone happy all of the time. I aim to make most of the people happy most of the time. But however, I usually only end up making some of the people happy some of the time. So that's just unfortunately the way the world rolls. So wanted to present to you this evening my work plan and review of the parking lot list that was generated from the 2020 Title 17 update. My work plan this year is very heavily focused on mandates from the state. Every 8 years, the state requires jurisdictions to update their comprehensive plan. They call this the periodic update. This periodic update requires that changes in state legislature be included and addressed in the city's comprehensive plan. This year includes adding a climate element to the comprehensive plan. West Richland, Pasco, Kennewick, Richland, and Benton County have partnered to take a regional approach to this element, and they'll be holding joint meetings to address the state requirements to reduce emissions and create policies to address local and regional impacts to climate. The housing element will see major changes and need to include affordability and policies to support a variety of housing types, including allowing some multifamily units in all residential neighborhoods and up to 2 accessory dwelling units on each residential lot. There will also be updates to the environmental element, Each element will have code changes that will follow, that are required by state law. However, addressing these includes significant public outreach, feedback, and council discussion. Most jurisdictions have multiple staff working for multiple departments for this effort. Given our staff levels, you're looking at the two people that are working on it, Roscoe and I. And all of these come with deadlines, or Roscoe loses funding for his capital projects. The city is also working on the Lewis and Clark Master Plan. This effort started back in, I think, 2021 and has included a lot of impact analysis to water, sewer, and transportation. Now that many of those questions have been answered or back at it, you'll be seeing more of this coming to you, and we're hoping to have this done by October of this year, which is on a very aggressive schedule. This too includes some code updates and designations for the master plan community. While we have a consultant helping, there is still much to do on the city side. We will review all the documents, present to the public and council, answer questions, and draft codes that need to be adopted with the plan as part of the master plan development. Once it is completed, we will see developments come in right away. I'm aware of multiple builders and commercial developments wanting to start taking down portions and are eager and ready to start. One of the hats I also wear is bringing business to West Richland. I have attended annually the 2020 until 2023, the ICSC conference in Las Vegas, which is a conference all the cities in the Tri-Cities attend with TriDec and other communities, an attempt to court businesses to move to West Richland. In an attempt to balance the budget, the conference needed to be cut from this biennial budget. I've been the point of contact with our real estate broker for the Belmont business lots. Since 2020, we've seen the sale of lots to Hapo Community Credit Union, Dutch Brothers, Benton Conservation District, and the mayor signed just this last week a purchase and sale agreement with the owners of La Bella Vita restaurant. I have been working with Teagues on a large development on the ranch that will bring daytime jobs and retail sales tax to the city. I work closely with TriDec on potential projects that our city fits the business, when our city fits the business needs. So many of you, well, all of you are here for the red and green cards. We should have brought those back for the firework discussion tonight, I think. So here is the parking lot list. Items that have been completed are those on the left, and those that have yet to be completed are on the right. I'd like to point out that some of those on the completed list were never on the parking lot list. There are always changes that come up that need to be addressed right away. Special projects, economic development opportunities happen along that aren't on the list, and we need to be flexible in our approach to address those needs. You'll notice that the items are on the not completed column that are highlighted. Those are funded and are part of the periodic update. You'll also see the Lewis and Clark Master Plan highlighted. The property owner has paid for the consultant's work on this and therefore is part of this year's work plan. All other items are not funded, and I don't have staff to assist with those. Over the last several budget requests, I've included a senior staff or a senior planner as a staff member needed to address some of these parking lot items. And unfortunately, budget hasn't been able to support that. So this list does not include special projects or committees that I also sit on and economic development work that my department is doing.
I will make note that go ahead and bring that list back up real quick, Stephanie, if you would, please. The not completed list is in no particular order. I asked Eric to go alphabetically, so we didn't see anything that was seemed to be a favorite on the top of the list. So there's your alphabetical order. So I see Councilmember Smart's taking a little snapshot of that one. So Eric, yeah, that concludes his presentation this evening as far as what the parking lot list update is. Kate, you were looking for an update of where we are and what's been going on. So certainly open up for any conversation, and certainly thanks for the effort that has been put forth by all of the departments for working with Little and accomplishing a lot. Public Works is also in that same game with the SR 224 project and where they're at with that. And you know, the big difference right here is with you got Public Works who has revenue funds and has grant funding that is available for all of these different projects, but unfortunately public or planning has very minimal that is funded, but there is things that are mandatory and do have funding behind them. The one thing he doesn't have is he doesn't have people, and it's a real shame, because the frustration goes on multiple sides of the fence when you have one department that is shy on staff and help and support. That also creates problems down the line as far as all the other departments, because everything that everybody does has a direct reflection on each other's department. So it's challenging for sure. So Councilmember Bloom just shared with us something here. So you've got your card up. What is this in regards
Okay,
to? Sir?
this is a parking lot issue that just came up.
Does it have to do with our agenda items this evening that are on the workshop agenda?
Yes, the community development parking lot items. This is a parking lot items that can be resolved without any changes, just an interpretation. The city's website currently says, do I need a permit to put up a landscape wall or retaining wall? The answer is no, as long as it's under 4 feet. The community development part demanded that I put in a permit as a fence. They're calling a retaining wall of fence.
This is outside the order of the agenda this evening, and if you'd like to bring this up to the staff members or myself, as I sent you an email back, as far as more than happy to sit down and talk to you about your project with our staff.
No, my project's over. This is for all the other people's projects.
This is not on a parking. This is not on the parking lot list. So it's outside the scope of what our agenda is this evening. So we're not going to have that discussion. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Correct. That does fall outside of the scope of what was intended and was noticed for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember Moran?
Thank you. I'm wondering, could we put the list back up there of the parking lot items? I was gonna follow Councilmember Smart's lead and take a picture of it with my phone.
I've been perusing it since I took the photo, so I'd love to be able to look at that more carefully.
I'm more than happy to forward the slide deck. I'll put it into a PDF and I'll email it out to all of you this evening if you'd like.
That'd be great. I just also was wondering if I just wanted to look at all of them right now too while we're doing the discussion. But yeah, also please. Oh, thank you. There we go.
What?
Mayor Pro Tem Brink's got his hand up next. Councilman Martin, then we'll come back to you. Councilman Moran, are you?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question, and I had a couple glitches in the audio, but did you or Eric mention that there are staffing shortfalls right now? Are there unfunded positions that is preventing some of these matters from being addressed? Not unfunded, excuse me, resignations or vacancies?
Not in his department, no.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Moran?
Thank you. Okay, so I had thought I saw it in there, but I wanted to make sure. When we are talking about parking lot items that, well, or just things that we're able to have time for, that the staff is able to have time for, are we saying that the items that are on the not completed list, we don't have time to do any of those? Or what are we, I'm just kind of wondering what we do think that we might be able to have time to do.
The highlighted items, the funded items, everything else is not funded. I don't have staff to work on those. So every single one of those that's not highlighted, and to be quite frank and honest, I really don't have staffing the levels that I need. I'm going to be spending a lot of time here trying to address all of the state requirements to address the periodic update and the climate element, and also the Lewis and Clark Ranch master plan, because I feel that the Lewis and Clark master plan is the future of the city of West Richland. That is a priority for me. It has been, and I want to continue to make sure that that crosses the finish line because of what it means and will mean for the future of the city of West Richland. To me, fireworks is way low on the totem pole when it comes to my priorities compared to that. Then the other part is the periodic update and the climate element. Those are state mandates. Again, I stated if I don't get that done in time on their deadline, which is June of 2026, all of it has to be done and adopted and submitted to Commerce and approved. If that doesn't happen, Roscoe is going to be very upset with me because his capital projects that are receiving state funding will stop receiving paychecks. So Aaron will be upset with me, Roscoe will be upset with me, you all will be upset with me because it's not completed. So those are the things that are weighing very heavy on my mind and shoulders. I started this last year with hair on my head and it's all gone. So it's very stressful and there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of public outreach, a lot of planning, a lot of code writing, a lot of working with council and making sure that you all are okay with some of these changes because, we've heard from Mr. Smart about townhomes in RM6. Well, that's actually a solution to solve some of the housing problems that the state is mandating us to address. So those are going to be some of the discussions, and I know that John's going to come to those meetings very prepared, and we're going to have some long discussions about it. So that's just facts of life, and I don't have a whole lot of time to sink into other things that I know are, again, not as pressing as what's on my desk today. And there's other cities have 2-3 staff members working on this of our same size. And it's literally just me because Alicia, my planner, she is pushing through all of the permits that we're getting. We've got plats that are coming in. We've got residential homes that are coming in. You're seeing all the commercial development coming in. She's reviewing all of those and making sure all of those are meeting their deadlines that they have. So not a whole lot of space for any special things to come through planning this year. So I apologize up front if I'm a little curt, but it's just the way my life is at this moment.
I don't think that you have any need to apologize. I think that it's just like, the saying goes, we're trying to do as much as we can with as little as we're able to have. So I think that it's good that we're able to do even what we can do. I do know that I was talking with one of the council members from Prosser, and they had received a grant fund for planning assistance. I don't know if okay. I didn't know if that was something that we could.
We have $500,000 from Commerce to work on the climate element. Because we're partnering with the other jurisdictions in our area, our portion of that was only 100,000, approximately, a little more than that, but about 100,000. So I've got just under $400,000 in reserve there that, because the periodic update, they only gave me 125,000 for help there. So I didn't have enough money to hire a consultant to really carry a lot of the load and help me through this. So I did a little hat trick, moved some monies around there per Commerce. They've approved it. They said it's okay. But the transportation element can be covered with the climate dollars, as well as the SEPA process can be covered by the climate element dollars. So I did move some of those monies around so that I can get more help, but I've reached out, got some Commerce dollars, and so we're getting 125 for the periodic update, and then $500,000. I still have to figure out what to do with the rest of what's left over there. The nice thing is with that one is that they are earmarking some of that to be used for implementation. So if there's some things that we find that we can do in the city, we can put that towards a project for Roscoe that he doesn't have time for to work on.
Fair enough. Thank you. I'm glad that we were able to do that. And I know that there are some other things that Kristen Eby, the grant navigator, I don't know if you've had a chance to get in touch with her to ask about some of the things that she had emailed about, but it sounds like there might still be some things out there that we could try and ask for assistance. And it sounds like she's very happy to help. I don't know whether it also includes help writing the request for the funds for the grants, but worth a shot to ask.
Yeah, I've looked at the grants. There's nothing in there that really helps me in my department, what I'm working on. A lot of the grants that are out there are more focused on his department. He already has enough grants to work on at the moment.
You can never have enough grants.
Yeah.
You can't afford it.
Fair.
I'll add to that as far, we meet monthly with Rick from Senator Cantwell's office. In this last meeting that we had, we were inquiring in regards to any federal funding grant wise for short-term planning. So he's going to take a look and see if there's anything that he can dig up on the federal side of it with Senator Cantwell's office. So it's nice to be able to have those opportunities of conversation. So.
I just knowing from my own outside of here job, I have a feeling that it might be at least 90 days before you could even think about seeing anything from the federal government.
Actually got the federal judge has got to stay on the decision that President Trump made. So that'll be at least 30 days. And then we had a meeting with ECA today in regards to the freeze. And it's partial, it's not all the way across the board. I've got a document from OMB that I'd be more than happy to share with you that we received and I shared with our staff too. And from the ECA side of it, they believe that things are going to be short-lived in regards to that freeze. So and none of the funding that has been frozen affects ECA and what our doings are with new nuclear consent-based siting, things in those natures. So we still have our funding coming. It wasn't everybody that got locked up.
Okay, I would love to, if you were able to share that email, because I only know what I see outside of here.
Oh, this has got the fancy little logo on top and everything come from DC. It's still smoking hot, so come across the presses.
I'm just seeing others that are from more of OPM and HR side of things.
Oh, yeah, it's train wreck. Okay, we'll start from the right, come to the left. Councilmember Stoker.
Yes, Eric. So thank you for a lot of your explanations here. And I'm hoping my question is just as an easy fall off the log type question to cover my ignorance. But several of your items here have a PUG acronym, which I'm assuming is periodic update. I'm just struggling with what the G stands for.
Oh, I should have dropped the G. It's the grant. So it's a periodic update grant, so it's covered by the grant. But yes, you're correct in the assumption that
I was trying
periodic
to,
update.
group. No, that can't be right. But okay.
Yeah, so I will just ask, what is the item that's covered on the right column at the bottom?
You know, I should have called that one out. I saw that just now. That is wireless facilities. So when Mr. Trump was president before, he allowed for 5G wireless to be granted out right everywhere. And a lot of communities were really concerned with what that might look like. So they implemented some design standards for them. And so that was something that I'd like to get to, but that's a like to and not a have to.
Yeah, so then my next real quick comment is that I think some of these, since they've been on this not completed list for so long, that is sort of in my mind a little bit of evidence that they don't actually need to be there. So there could be a way to shorten this list with just a quick topic review. I've done that in the last 3 minutes and came up with roosters, which should be covered by just a simple noise ordinance. Fireworks, which we just discussed and decided that there was no immediate use to pursue, I believe, and hearing examiner, which we seem to have survived without for several years now and probably don't need to change however it works right now. And the sign code, which has been there for a long, long time. But we seem to also, as a community, seem to be surviving just fine with our current sign code. So I don't know if council has seen any other topics or if they agree with the fact that maybe we're surviving just fine with our code and we don't need to have these on on the list necessarily. Maybe we can move a few other things on there.
Well, what I would suggest, there's some education that needs to happen there because the sign code, our code is currently out of, it's not compliant with some case law. So there needs to be some
Okay.
changes to it. It's just, to me, ignoring the signs that pop up around town and everything, it's easier to do that than go through all that process when I've got other hot cakes on my burners. And then, but for me, I would recommend that we go back to the red card, green card and go back over this at some point in the future when there's some time to do that. I would probably recommend maybe after the periodic updates completed that we review the work list and then maybe prioritize what needs to be worked on. But I would recommend coming back with the red card and green cards at that time and have those discussions because John, you're a wonderful person, but your views are not the same as the other six up there with you. And the same goes for each one of you. So,
Yeah.
you know, it gets to that, okay, well, what's the majority of everybody want to do?
And since
that's
we
my
don't
point.
have the ability to do anything in this budget cycle, I'd recommend that take place during or prior to or during the 26, 27 budget cycle, because that's when it'd be prudent as whether anything can be done with this list based on the ability to fund or not fund.
Sure, that's great. I appreciate the suggestion. That's all. That was really my point, is that we might be able to maybe just talk very briefly about these without actually addressing the whole topic in depth if everybody decides that maybe it's not.
We've got an hour and a half into this so far, and it's a relevant moot point whether we green card, red card, or have the discussion, because there's, you know, like I said, this is outside the budget cycle, so let's just roll with it. I mean, it's not gonna hurt just sitting there.
I'm not demanding immediate action whatsoever. I'm just
Well, I thought you said you wanted to
commenting.
talk about it.
No. Did I misspeak? No.
That's the way I understood it.
No, this is just like if you have another workshop in the future that's going to last for 2 hours, you could probably buzz through some of these things if they're
The
controversial.
thing of buzzing through and
Or if it's a 50-50 split or even close, then keep it on there. But some of these might be things that people have just decided are
past
fine.
Mayor Pro Tem's bedtime right now, so
All
I
right.
got a smile from
Fair
him.
enough.
Councilmember Bloom.
Yeah, my,
No, I'm good, Mr. Mayor. We can go on, but I wouldn't suggest doing it tonight without everyone having proper preparation to think about it.
Okay.
on the list, you have standards and text amendments. Does this mean you won't accept requests for text amendments like we ended up down that rabbit hole with marijuana?
Well, the marijuana was on the list. Cannabis was a topic that was on the parking lot list.
No, but we've had
But we do
multiple
have other
text-
text amendments, and I mentioned that before, is that there's some on the completed list that were never on the parking lot list, that are items like, for instance,
I'm talking
the,
about the ones that are
Auto-
submitted by developers who want text amendments.
right, so the auto body shop and the commercial limited, that was a text amendment that was submitted by an applicant because they were wanting to build the auto body shop there next to the car wash. And so Hobby Farms on the GC, that was to address the school district issue that came up that we were trying to fix. And things like that were never on the list that was created. But to address some of these concerns, events in the RM10 event centers, those are things that came up along the way, and I expect to see those as well, and we're going to do our best to address them. If they come in hot and difficult, we're going to have some real big discussions about whether we tackle that or not, because again, I just don't have staffing right now, and putting big projects on the list to have discussions about would take away from other projects that are, in my opinion, a lot more important and pertinent at this time.
That's why I'm asking, you will reject those text amendment requests?
Case by case. Yep. Okay. Real good. Well, thank you very much, council, for your evening. We will go ahead and adjourn this workshop at 7:03. Mayor Pro Tem Brink, safe travels. Thank you, sir. We'll see you when you get home.
All right, good night, everyone.
When we talk about fences and.
Whenever.